I'm sure there is a skill you need for your business right now that you don't have yet. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's managing people, or reading financial statements, negotiating contracts, speaking on camera, or maybe even speaking in public. We'll cover how to acquire this skill quickly using the iteration loop. You know you need the new skill. You've probably thought about taking a course, reading a book, watching some tutorials, and you've probably also noticed that knowing something and being able to actually do it in a life situation are two completely different things. Today, I'll show you a different way to approach skill acquisition, one that cuts learning time dramatically, and one that I've seen work for people at every stage of building something on their own. It comes from the same place as the feedback loop I talked about in the last video. And it starts with one uncomfortable idea. The fastest way to get good at something is to do it badly on purpose as quickly as possible. Here's how most people approach learning a new business skill. They research it, they consume content about it, courses, books, podcasts, YouTube. They take notes. They feel like they're getting better. And then when they finally have to actually use the skill in a real situation, a real sales call, for example, a real negotiation, a real presentation, they freeze, they fumble, perform at about 30% of what they hoped for. Because watching someone sell is not selling. Reading about negotiation is not negotiating. Consuming content about a skill gives you knowledge, not capability. The gap between knowledge and capability is practice. Specifically practice with real feedback. And the longer you spend in the research and consumption phase, the more you delay the only thing that actually builds the skill, the doing. In 15 years of program management, the sharpest people I worked with, the ones who grew fastest, were almost never the ones who studied the most. They were the ones who jumped into things slightly before they felt ready, made mistakes quickly, got feedback quickly, and adjusted quickly. The ones who waited until they felt ready often waited a very long time. For example, in software development, a beta product is a version that's functional but not finished. It's released to real users, specifically to gather real feedback, because no amount of internal testing produces the same quality of information as actual usage in the real world. Beta products are deliberately imperfect. That's their point. The companies that ship beta versions learn faster than the ones that wait for perfect finished product. They find out what's broken while there's still time to fix it cheaply. They discover what users actually want instead of what the team assumed they would want. And they build faster because they're responding to reality instead of just imagining it. The beta approach mindset applied to skill building works exactly the same way. You are the product in beta phase. The market, your customers, your audience, your conversations is the user testing environment. Every real interaction is the feedback. Every uncomfortable moment where you fumbled is a bug report, telling you exactly where to improve. The goal is not to arrive perfectly formed. The goal is to ship, gather feedback, and iterate. What this looks like in practice. Let me take sales as the example, because it's the skill most freelancers and business owners dread the most and avoid the longest. The traditional approach. Watch sales courses like Alex Hormozi, read books on persuasion like Cialdini, study frameworks, practice scripts in front of a mirror, feel more confident, then eventually have a real sales conversation, which feels nothing like mirror and goes badly. Return to consuming more content. The beta testing approach. Have the first real sales conversation as soon as you have something to sell. Yes, it will be bad. Yes, you'll stumble. Yes, you will most likely lose the sale because of something you did wrong, but you'll walk away with something no course could ever give you. Specific information, real specific information about exactly where the conversation broke down. Did you talk too much? Did you not understand the customer's actual problem before proposing a solution? Did you stumble when the price came up? Did you fail to handle a specific objection? Did you even forget to tell the customer to buy? That's your bug report. That's what you work on before the next conversation. After 10 real conversations, even if most of them go badly, you will have learned more than you would have from 50 hours of courses because the feedback was real, immediate, and specific to your actual situation. The most successful freelancers I've seen build their businesses weren't the most talented ones. They were the ones who got comfortable with being in the beta version, with doing things imperfectly in public, and who used every real interaction as a learning opportunity rather than a performance. The feedback quality problem. Not all feedback is equal, that's true. And this is where the beta mindset requires some additional thinking. When you're learning a skill through real practice, you need to be deliberate about what feedback you're collecting and whether it's actually telling you something useful. A client who ghosts you after a proposal isn't necessarily giving you useful information. They might have had a budget change or gone with a competitor who offered something completely different, or 100 other reasons that have nothing to do with your sales skill. A client who tells you, "I'll think about it," and then doesn't respond might be politely avoiding an awkward conversation about the price, which is very specific, useful information. The way to get better feedback is to ask for it directly. At the end of a sales conversation that didn't convert, you can simply say, "I appreciate your time. Can I ask, was there anything about what I presented that didn't quite fit what you were looking for?" Most people will tell you something honest if you ask plainly. Or you can even ask a better one. What stops you from buying now? In my experience, asking for a direct feedback in an uncomfortable moment produces about 10 times more useful information than any amount of post-mortem analysis on your own. And the people who build skills fastest are almost always the ones who are most comfortable asking, "What could I have done differently here?" The deliberate practice layer. There's one more component to this, and it comes from research on how experts in any field actually develop their skills. It's called deliberate practice, and it's different from just doing something repeatedly. Deliberate practice means identifying the specific component of the skill that's the weakest, isolating it from the other ones, and working on this specifically, not just repeating the whole skill hoping it gets better. For example, a tennis player who hits 1,000 serves doesn't improve as fast as a tennis player who spends an hour working on specifically the ball toss, then specifically the follow-through, then specifically the placement of the backhand. Same amount of practice time, dramatically different results. For a freelancer working on sales, this might look like, after 10 real conversations, review where the conversations most often stall. Maybe it's always in the first 5 minutes, the framing of what you do. So you work specifically on your opening. You write 3 different versions. You test each one in the context. You test each one in the next 3 conversations. You see which one keeps people engaged. For that, obviously, you need to record the calls and presentations you give to the customers. So you don't base your iterations on what you remember, but on what actually happened. That's deliberate practice inside the beta mindset. Real practice for the feedback. Isolated work on specific weaknesses. Then back into real practice to test the fix. How to structure this for any skill? The framework applies to any business skill you need to build. It's 5 simple steps. First, identify the one skill that, if improved, would impact your results most right now. Not the one you want the most, but the one that the business needs the most. It's a difference. Second, the minimum viable way to start practicing it in a real context as soon as possible. For sales, that's having sales conversations. For public speaking, that's speaking in public, even at a local meetup, a Toastmasters group, or even at a language session, even at a community center. For writing, that's publishing, for example, even to a small audience. Third step, after every real practice, write down one specific thing that didn't work the way you wanted it to. One thing, not a couple, just one. The specificity is what allows you to actually fix it. Use the recording for it if you have it. The fourth, before the next real session, work on that one specific thing. Rewrite that section. Rehearse the moment. Think through a better approach. Fifth step, go back into real context and run it again. That loop, real practice, specific feedback, isolated improvement, back into real practice, is how capability actually builds. Not through consumption of content, through iteration of action. The permission you've been waiting for. There's something underneath all of this that's worth naming directly. Most people who delay skill building aren't lazy. They're afraid of performing badly in front of real people. They're waiting to feel ready, which is another way of saying they're waiting to be good before they practice being good. It's like waiting to be muscular and fit before going to the gym. This is completely backwards, and almost everyone who builds something on their own goes through it. The permission you're waiting for is this. Being bad at something in front of real people is not a sign that you shouldn't be doing it. It's the process. It's what learning looks like from the outside. The most accomplished freelancers and business owners I've worked with have one thing in common. They have a long list of embarrassing early attempts, bad pitches, awkward presentations, proposals that missed completely. They talk about these things with something close to pride, because those moments are where the skill was actually built. You're not going to learn by watching others do it. You learn by doing it badly, finding out exactly why it was bad, fixing that specific thing and doing it again. Ship the better version, gather the feedback, iterate. So there you have it. The skill you need, whatever it is not waiting for you on the other side of the next course or the next book. It's waiting for you on the other side of the next real attempt, the next conversation, the next proposal, the next time you do the thing before you feel ready. Start there, start now, do it badly, learn from it specifically, do it again, slightly better. That's not failure, that's the process. I'm Alex, and this is The Alpha Drive, agile thinking for businesses and life. If this landed, subscribe.